gonna take the clock out, and then I'm gonna go take the clock to Dan, and hopefully he can fix it.
I've got to rebuild a clock, and I thought it would be interesting because so few people do this, and yet so many people need their old clocks rebuilt. I thought it would be a good thing to sort of do and show you. I am not school trained at this. I have no formal education at all in it. I did, however, have a guy on the other end of the phone tell me a few things, and I took what he taught me and I took some basic mechanical skills and sort of put it together. It's a 12-volt analog clock, but he said prior to 1962 they were built in a different way, and he said they're effectively unrebuildable. The probability of this working is low. So the basic challenge that you face when building a clock that's almost 70 years old is that it's 70 years old. And my success rate on building these clocks that are built from the 50s, the reality is you're 20%, 25%. It has to do with their completely different construction on the inside, a far more complex winding system. Many times they're smaller like this, but it's also the age. So let me tell you the tools I use. Number one tool I use is my phone, and I don't use it as a phone, I use it as a camera. You will need a set of jeweler's pliers, and then I use this, which is just another set of screwdrivers. So very good to have a power supply. You can use a 12-volt battery. I use this actual small power supply. And then just for checking resistance on things, an ohm meter. So the first and most important thing is opening the clock up. We're gonna start right here. You have to take the set screw, which is this piece right here, the one that changes the hours hand, and you've got to remove it. This can be one of the most difficult steps because they can be really, really tight. This clock, which is now almost 70 years old, has never been apart. I can tell by looking at it. No one's ever pried it apart before, so everything's been in place for almost 70 years. So getting it apart is going to be a bit of a challenge. And I'll tell you right now, it's already so tight, this mechanism, that it's not going to come off with my fingers, which sucks because I really hate putting a tool on the knob because this little knob is made out of plastic and it will damage the knob. So I'm going to try and do it as gently as I can. Now, what I'm particularly excited about this clock is that one of my heroes, Don Yanko, had this clock in his car as he raced it for many years. And so for me, the very cool part about that is that there's a good chance this clock actually kept lap times for one of the greatest race car drivers and absolutely one of the foremost builders of muscle cars that the world has ever known. I mean, I would put Don Yanko in the same category as Carroll Shelby. Wow, it is, okay. I'm gonna go grab a set of needle vice grips. Let's see if that's enough of a grip on this thing. Otherwise, this is gonna be one of the shortest videos because we're gonna get nothing done. It has still not broken free. This one, all right, so this one's being like extra cantankerous. That's Heidi. She makes sure we know that anyone who's walking in. Aha! Finally, it went. I felt it go that time. So again, in this case, I'm using the serrations that run that way so that I do as little damage as possible, and actually it still looks perfect, so I'm very happy about that. All right, so now we've done what I've told you is many cases one of the toughest steps, which is just getting that knob off. So now the next step is releasing the face from the clock. When we pull this clock open, the thing that generally goes wrong with them, which is the thing I'm always the most concerned with, is the electronics. But the basic parts of a clock are the wind mechanism, which is always going to be electric. In a 12-volt car, it'll always be a 12-volt wind mechanism. There will be the movement, which is the escapement, the balance wheel, the balance shaft, and all those really cool parts that make the little tick, tick, tick sound. And then the last part is, you know, the dial, the face, the hands. This is insanely tight, and you got to remember the whole time you're working on it that it's an incredibly delicate thing. So, you know, you're gonna want to take, you know, a hammer to it, and you can't. All right, so at this point, I've got the face off it. You can see we're down to the hands. This was the thing I've been struggling with for 15 minutes. So it's off and it's in good shape, but you can see the lens is dirty and there's some scratches on it. But this is the beauty I've been after right here. So we're almost to the mechanism. So now we have to turn it over and we have to remove the hardware here. And you have to be careful because it's going to want to fall when you release it. You don't want anything to touch the hands, because if you bend them up, I mean, I've had clocks not be able to go back together because the hands were bent. So all of those are off, and now we're basically going to push the movement out and do our best not to damage it. So I'm going to push on these screws and gently pull on this. Come on, girl. I'm going to push a little bit. All right. So it released. Put the housing down. And so now we're down to the movement. So what we're looking for is, you can see these windings here. You see how they're kind of a purple red? I'm looking for burn spots on them and I don't see any, so that's excellent. This clock is surprisingly not dirty, and where that's bad news is I like a dirty clock, because a lot of times if you just clean enough of the dirt out of it, it'll start functioning. So what I want to try and do right now is locate all my parts. So as far as I'm concerned, the heart of the clock is this little thing right here. It's called the balance wheel, and it's the balance shaft. And do this stuff very carefully. And you see this piece right here, how when I move it with my finger, see how it's coming right to a stop? It's coming very, very quickly to a stop. So I can tell right now it's dry, it's dirty, it needs to be lubricated. And so what I'm going to try doing is I'm going to manually wind the clock. And that's, and look, you just gently play with a clock until you find all the parts. But this is the spring, so listen to it as it clicks. Okay, so it clicked. And what you pray for is when you get a few clicks, and I heard it click about 6-7 times. So you see the balance wheel actually moved better this time. So this whole wheel, I'm just going to blow on it and put some light on it, but it's moving better already. So that tells me that what was stopping it from moving was in fact, or at least part of it, it was just no spring pressure. So the spring is now partially wound and the balance wheel is not working. So it's not clicking. So when you finally get to the point where it moves and then you hear the little tick, 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 that's a thing called the escapement. It's that little grasshopper piece that goes back and forth that actually sort of keeps the time. Unfortunately, statistically, I have less than a 50-50 shot of getting this working, just because when they're 70 years old, the electronics, they tend to be dead. If a clock was either exposed to corrosion, just moisture in the air, or it was jammed up and the electronics were still working, but the hands weren't. All I've done so far, besides taking it apart and sort of freeing everything, was I've blown on it. And I know you're going to say, well, what does that do? Believe it or not, dust, that balance wheel, the shaft of the balance wheel is smaller than like a stick pin. And so because it is so small, the smallest amount of dust, debris, corrosion, anything in that can freeze it up. And once it's frozen up, you can put all the power to it you want. It won't free up. So sometimes just pulling a clock apart and blowing on it can actually fix it. Now, since we've got it apart, we're gonna go ahead and do some more things. So things are looking really good, but I wanna show you a problem. Okay, and there was our problem. You see, the balance wheel just came to a stop. So that means we still have work to do, but I'm already like super excited because so far, all we've had to do is take it apart, and although it's come to a stop, the electronics are working, which is the number one thing that'll kill one of these old clocks. And the second thing is really worn out balance wheel escapements and all of the gears. So it's trying right now. It's struggling, and every once in a while, the balance wheel will come back to life. So I'm going to hand wind it again. So apparently Don Yanko didn't mess with this clock, and I'm actually very happy he did, because although I love Don Yanko's work, if you saw some of the work he did with a blowtorch on his Corvette, you would say, yeah, stay away from the clock, my friend. And I'm gonna show you guys a technique, and I'll tell you right now, I'm gonna get hate mail for this technique. So right now, my balance wheel sort of spins up and slows down, and that's caused by dirt. I clean the clocks by doing two things. The first one is what I'm about to show you. So in terms of cleaning a clock, please don't take your air compressor and blow it out. The pieces in here are so delicate, I guarantee you will damage, destroy your clock, and you'll never ever get it rebuilt. If you drop it, it'll never be rebuilt. So you gotta handle this literally with just, you're walking on rice paper and using velvet gloves. So I just use my mouth, trying not to spit. I blow the dust out. So now I've done that, and now I'm gonna do the highly, highly controversial thing. I'm wondering if I should do it. I've never screwed a clock up doing this. In fact, the only part on a 57 Corvette clock that can be screwed up doing what I'm about to show you is the face, because it's plastic. All the rest of the internal mechanism on this clock is either aluminum, brass, steel, lead, so nothing can be affected by it, but this face can be greatly affected by it. I'm gonna do it because it'll give me the best chance. And then after you scream at me, I'll explain why I'm doing it. You'll need two things to do this next step. You'll need a garbage can without holes, and you'll need some brake parts cleaner. It's dangerous, so don't do this step if you have a weak heart. So I've got the edge of the clock completely sealed up, and now I'm just sort of creating a little shroud for it. If there's any plastic in it at all, don't do this technique. I mean, not even for 1 second, don't do it, because you'll destroy the clock. So what I like about the brake parts cleaner is, first of all, this stuff has a vapor pressure of about 0. So it goes on, and just like it has to for brakes, it dissolves almost instantly, or it evaporates almost instantly. I want to get the brake parts cleaner about 2 inches away. I'm gonna do a couple quick passes, and as a rule, I spray it until I stop seeing dirt, but we're still only talking seconds here. So I'm gonna control my jet and go with a lighter spray. All right, so 1001, 1002, 1003. I'm looking. I'm peeling, come on. Okay, I got absolutely none on the face, but some dirt came off it, so that's good. And the balance wheel stopped. The balance wheel and the balance shaft have been spinning the whole time. I don't know if I've lodged a piece of dirt in it. I don't know what's going on. The balance wheel has stopped moving, and of course the balance wheel is the heart of the clock. So I'm hoping that it was nothing more than, it's not dirt, it's not grime, because you can dislodge dirt and grime and put it into a new spot. And I'm hoping the balance wheel will come back, because I mean, it's still wound. If it does, then we keep going, and if it doesn't, then it's one more clock that didn't make it. You know, it's funny, I build these clocks all the time, and I don't think my hands shake, but today, I don't know if it's because it's Don Yanko's clock or if it's because you guys are watching, but it's actually more nervous than I've been building a clock in a long time. Come on. I don't really like touching it. I like using breath. Okay, it just moved a couple times, so we're gonna keep lubricating it. You're just gonna go around the clock in every shaft through every gear and every wheel. You're just gonna apply a tenth of a drop of oil on it. So don't be spooked by the fact that it's gonna stop working after you do the cleaning, because you've taken all those lubricants off of all of those very, surgically lubricated parts, and it's gone now. So you can see now my clock is functioning. So I'm not done though. I'm gonna continue to add a little bit of oil, and you don't want much. I mean, this stuff is thinner than water, but even the resistance of that can cause you problems on these gears. They're so fine. But I can't tell you how happy I am right now, because it's just working. It just stopped, so we've hit a spot in a gear that is dry. So I'm gonna add oil to all the critical spots. So she's working and she's firing. So those are the two most critical things. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna retape it, and I'm gonna do a general lubrication. I've sort of accomplished the major goal, but now what I want is lubrication on every contact point of every gear. So at this point, I'm going to go get my second secret weapon that, again, a lot of clock builders would probably disagree with me on, but it's worked so well for so many clocks that I do it. So I'll be right back. So now I'm back with what I'm going to call sort of secret weapon number 2, and that's WD-40. You would never want to use this nozzle because it's going to just destroy the clock. So what I'm going to do is rotate this about 360 degrees while I spray from around 2 feet. So I'm going to start the spray, and I'm going to throw the clock into it and be done. So what happened right there was everything on the clock got very, very lightly wet. I'm going to remove the tape, and then we're going to blow once again to blow any excess oils off any of those little tiny fine components. Again, very careful how you grab it, because everything on it is delicate. I don't know, it's like trying to walk with high heels on rice paper. It's very important you never put oil on the clock without cleaning it first, because if you do, what you're going to end up with is 1,000 little points of micro sludge, because that oil will go in and take all that little fine dirt and turn it into an impossible situation. I can't guarantee any of this is going to work, but I've had fairly good luck so far. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to hand wind it again. Let me show you what is an absolutely beautiful thing. See the balance wheel? Remember before it was spinning only about 1/3 of a spin? Yeah, it looks like it's almost a full 360 circle. That looks like a really happy balance wheel. I mean, it is just going crazy. By the way, they don't have to, but when they do it, it sort of makes your day. So now we're going to do the last thing, and we're going to prop it up a little bit so it's sort of in the correct configuration with 12 up at about the top. I'm going to connect my negative lead and my positive lead. And I don't expect anything to happen when I first turn this on because it may not have wound down enough, but we're going to listen just in case. Oh, it did anyway. So it just wound. And so, all right, it doesn't happen this way as often as I wish it would. We're waiting for the electronic movement to go tick. And at that point, we probably have a good clock. Then comes the real patient part, because you've got to set it and leave it on your desk for about 1 or 2 days. And after 1 or 2 days, if it's still working good, you very carefully reassemble the clock and set it again for 1 or 2 days and make sure it's still moving, and then you do your fine adjustments on time. So at this point, we can kill our power supply, and we get to do the thing that I love most with clocks, and that is hand it off to the guy that's going to install it in the car. And then obviously we want to make sure that all the wiring is good in the car, so this is going to work the way it's supposed to. Hey Colin, how are the gauges coming?
Going pretty good. Everything works so far. Last
You got
one?
this.
Awesome.
Works great. So folks, stay tuned. I want you to see the whole episode. In fact, if you follow along, Colin's going to go ahead and do the install right now. But look for the actual episode where this car is featured, and we show you the build of the car in addition to the build of the clock.
Looks pretty nice to me. It's gonna look good working with the rest of them.